Hello, and you're listening to Your Majesty's Secret Podcast. I like my podcast shaken, not stirred. Only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network. If you'd like to check out more shows, go to foureyedradio.com.
Bond. James Bond. Shaken, not stirred.
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
For your eyes only, darling.
I never joke about my word 007.
For England, James?
Come in, Univex. James Bond here.
Am I going to have a problem with you, Bond?
Allow me to introduce myself.
You're that secret agent! That English secret agent from England!
No, you're cleverer than you look.
Still better than looking cleverer than you are.
My God, what's Bond doing?
I think he's attempting re-entry, sir.
007 reporting for duty.
Hello! The name's Berkeley, Ziggy Berkeley from Cinema on the Rocks. And with me is Eric Dewey from Socially Awkward Studios. And you are listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network. That's right, this is the show where we talk about bondage! James Bondage! And today is the last time we'll be talking about James Bondage before the release of Spectre!
Dum-da-da-dum.
So, before we do that, we had one little more bit of questioning of judgment to get out of the way.
I question your judgment, sir.
And I questioned yours. That's right. You may recall that a few episodes back, we had the results of our question judgment contest after we asked you, the members of the audience, to question our judgment about two films that we had talked about in the past. And we did so, and I thought that was a very, very good episode. In fact, it's one of my favorites that we've ever done, to be completely honest. So, good job, you guys.
Yay!
But that got us to thinking that maybe I should question Eric's judgment and give him the opportunity to question mine. And so, we each got to choose one movie that we questioned the other's judgment on. I think this ended up getting slightly influenced by the results of episode number 50's The List.
The List.
Because I just have a suspicion that these are not the movies we would have chosen for each other before we did that episode. I mean, that's just my guess, because I know the one Eric chose for me, if before that episode, I would have thought it totally out of left field. I had two films that I was pretty sure he would have on his list for me, and nope, those weren't it. He picked something totally different. So did I pick something different than you thought, sir?
You know what? I don't think so. I think this was definitely one that was on my radar to be one of them. But then again, there's so many ways it could have gone, because we have had differences of opinions on various things, usually not dramatically on the movies in total. Usually our differences are more in the actual individual aspects of the movies, like when we're doing the lists of just cars or the girls or something like that, and then we have vast differences when it comes to the movies. But usually we're fairly close to each other on the actual movies, or so I thought, until we did the list, and I was like, what? So, yeah, I don't know. There was a few ways that I thought you could have gone, and this was one of them. It wasn't necessarily my top one, though.
Fair enough. Ooh, we may have to do a sequel to this. But
I question your questioning, sir.
Yeah, what you said. No, interesting thing about basing this on our prejudices that we quickly acquired after doing the list episode is that we both admitted that after the first 2, 3, 4 at the most, it was very much hair splitting. So we're questioning our judgments on split hairs. At least I think you questioned mine as split hair. I think I have a little more justification than you did, but of course I'm going to say that, because I'm the one questioning your judgment. However, we're going to start with Eric questioning my judgment. So, Eric, what movie did you question my judgment on?
I questioned your judgment on the second and final installation of Timothy Dalton's era of the James Bond universe, License to Kill.
You did?
Did I? Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is how confusing it got when we revealed our choices. I'm sorry. I questioned yours on the other one, on The Living Daylights, because I felt you did not give it near enough credit. So it could have gone either way because it was kind of a combo deal.
So now that Eric has let the cat out of the bag, yes, we're going to be redoing the Timothy Dalton episode. Because I questioned Eric's judgment about the second installment of the Timothy Dalton era, and that being License to Kill. Yes. So
we're talking about The Living Daylights and License to Kill is what we're doing.
So, like I said, we're redoing the Timothy Dalton episode. Funny how these question judgment shows work out that way. We don't plan them. We really couldn't have planned the first one because they came from the audience. And we didn't plan this one either. I thought he was going to make me watch The Man with the Golden Gun again. So yeah, this actually was a complete surprise to me when he said The Living Daylights, because I don't hate this movie. I really don't. It's just when it came to hair splitting, it went way lower on the list. It just happened that way. So... Now, the way that I heard you tell it is you gave me a very simple set of instructions with regard to how you wanted me to approach watching The Living Daylights when I reviewed it again with a freshly critical eye. And you said that I should watch it as though it were superior to License to Kill, which it is. So basically... He gave me the...
Now, I did specify, or at least I hope I did specify. This was all via text message, so I may have missed a word. I didn't want to specify that The Living Daylights is a better Bond movie than License to Kill.
Aha. Okay. But, yeah, so basically he gave me the cheap beer of instructions. So, with that said, here we go, revamping our discussion of The Living Daylights. Who would like to... In fact, you're the champion of this movie. Why don't you get us started? How would you like to begin?
Well, you know what? We might as well go in order, since we are talking about the Dalton flicks, and that's just the way it ended up. That wasn't planned. But like I said, it could have gone either way for me, because I could have said, I want you to rewatch The Living Daylights because I want you to see that it's better as a Bond film than License to Kill. Or I could have said, hey, I want you to watch License to Kill again because I think you'll find that it's not as good a Bond flick as The Living Daylights. I could have really gone either way with that, We could have both kinds of music in here, country and Western. But, no, when it comes right down to it, when I compare these two movies, and that's really what this, and again, because of the list, not because you had The Living Daylights so low on your list, but because you had it so far separated from License to Kill, with License to Kill on the high side. I felt that they were much closer together in terms of quality, but for me, The Living Daylights really had more of what it took to be a Bond film than License to Kill did. License to Kill was a great 80s action flick. Great fun film, totally 80s, totally, tubular, action film, but I think Living Daylights was a better Bond film. You had more of the Bondinosity factor and less of just here's an action movie with a realistic villain and a realistic scenario, and it just happens to have James Bond in it. That's kind of where I felt License to Kill came in. It was a good movie, yes, but I didn't think it was... The Bondinosity factor wasn't there for me.
All right. We'll get to that. We'll get to the License to Kill part later. But as far as Living Daylights, I'm going to ride the train with you for a while, and then I'm going to jump off.
Uh-oh.
So let's start with the beginning, of course. What we have is, of course, Living Daylights, 1987, and this was the movie that came after the collective groan of disappointment from much of the popular audience, which is kind of a shame, really, because... This followed the retirement of Roger Moore from the role of 007, and everyone knew who they wanted to be the next James Bond, Pierce Brosnan, because he had made such an impression with audiences in his role as Remington Steele on television that they just said, yeah, this guy is a complete natural. He is the guy we want to have play 007. And in fact, he was cast. They said, yeah, we'll do this. And then NBC, which had just canceled Remington Steele, said, oh, wait, James Bond's in it now? On the very last day we can possibly renege the cancellation, they did. And therefore reactivated his contract, which made him obligated to film the series. And they said, hey, Eon, we'll share him with you. And Eon said, F off. And so NBC was suddenly left with the guy who no longer could be James Bond. They canceled the show after just, I think it was 5 or 6 episodes. I think just 5.
Ooh.
And then we ended up having to get ourselves a new James Bond, a person who had been considered for the role of 007 way back in 1969. Yes, Timothy Dalton had been on the short list of candidates to play 007, replacing Sean Connery in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But
would have been so much better.
But the decision was made that no, he was just too young at the time. So they didn't go with him. But now they had a chance to circle back for a more mature, more hard-nosed, more serious 007 for the Ace. What do you think of that choice?
Well, it being that I really liked Timothy Dalton as Bond, I'm good with the choice. Like I said, I would have accepted him probably earlier, but you know what? Honestly, I think maybe he was right. Maybe he would have been too young for it at the time. So it's conceivable that it was a better time for him to do it now, or I should say now. I should say in 1987, as opposed to in the 60s, because he was much, much younger then, and he might not have been able to pull it off. But then again, as we like to point out, and contrary to the popular opinion these days in the Bondverse, Lazenby just wasn't it. The question is, if they had gotten Dalton in there, yes, he would have been young, but would he have been able to pull it off and not require them to shell out the big bucks to get Connery back just to keep the series alive? I don't know.
I think he would have been too young at the time. I do agree with that. I think we're noticing that the ideal age zone for a new 007 is low 40s. That seems to be how it works out the best. And I think the idea of somebody as young as Dalton would have been at the time, having the history of the previous movies behind him, it wouldn't necessarily look like he could have lived through those movies. It's just a thought. But either way, I liked the casting of Timothy Dalton. I thought it was a wonderful selection. He is a very different Bond. There is no question that he is very much... He's not Roger Moore. I mean, that's just flat out. I mean, not just physically. I think
that was probably their biggest selling point when they tapped him for it, because people were tired, unfortunately. I love Roger Moore, but I think people were looking for something less campy, less tongue-in-cheek, and more, let's get some action going.
Which I find interesting, because they wanted Pierce Brosnan, and they wanted him because of his work in Remington Steele, which is very Roger Moore. In terms of how Roger Moore was playing Bond in the 70s. It was more toward the humorous side, more toward the sly side. It was much more Roger Moore than the Pierce Brosnan that we ended up with in the 90s, actually. I think the Pierce Brosnan we ended up with in the 90s is somewhere between Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton, I think we can safely class as the most serious of the Bonds, running a very close first just ahead of Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
But I liked the choice. I think he played it very well. I thought it was an interesting selection. And as we noted a lot when we did our original discussions of the films, one of the things that makes the James Bond franchise so great is that it's a reflection of its era. Whatever movie you're watching is usually a very good snapshot of something about the times in which it was filmed. It's one of those rare series that's timeless, but very much within its own time. So you can watch the movies from the 60s and still enjoy them now. You can watch movies from the 70s, still enjoy them now. And yet, the movies from the 60s look like the 60s. They say something about them. The ones from the 70s say something about them. The ones from the 80s say something about them. And the 80s were not only high camp action, but they were also tense. And this was... The Dalton era Bond, I think, was more to the vibe of the real-world tension that was being experienced then, rather than the campy decade of excellence that was in the popular entertainment. I think that's what they were going for there, somewhere between the Bond of the previous 7 movies and the Bond of the books.
Yeah.
Closer, of course, to the Bond of the movies, but still.
Yeah. And as we've discussed previously, Dalton was pretty much a darker Bond when I guess the world just wasn't ready for a darker Bond. They love it now. You throw this out now, and it's great. You get Daniel Craig, and it's fantastic, and it's great, and we get great storytelling and great filmmaking. But the world just wasn't ready for Bond to be that serious and that dark, I guess. And it's unfortunate because I think both of these movies are great films, and I think it's a shame that people just weren't really ready to have Bond be that darker, serious character that we all know that he should be.
Now, having discussed that, let's talk about how he starts off in the film, and I thought this was a very good opener. And I love, one of the things I really enjoy seeing in all of the Bond films as things go on is just the incongruous places that M ends up putting an office. Because, wherever he goes, he will have a desk. Yep. There will be paper on it, and it will look somewhat official, no matter what. It can be in the middle of Egyptian ruins, or, in this case, in the cargo hold of an airplane.
Yep.
So that when you open the jump door, all the papers go flying everywhere. I love the continuity of that. Not only do we have the same M, but we also just have that thing with the desk. It's just a little thing that I've always really enjoyed. And, of course, we have the double O's being used as an exercise to test the SAS guards guarding the Prudential Insurance Company. The Rock of Gibraltar.
Rock of Gibraltar, yeah, that's right.
For those who didn't know, that's the rock they're talking about. Get a piece of the rock? That's the Rock of Gibraltar there.
I like the one that's Welcome to the Rock. Oh, that's a different rock altogether.
Yeah, that was Connery. So I love the opening sequence because you've got, again, an iconic little piece of the British Empire, the Rock of Gibraltar, which Britain still has, even though physically it's located between Spain and Morocco. But just little iconic piece of the British Empire. It's really hard to figure out how to fit it into one of these movies. They finally figured out how to do it. Parachutes in, and we get a very nice opening action sequence. Pretty standard, except for the little tag that says Spiernam, which the established Bond fan who has done more than just watch the movies, but in fact has read the books, knows is another term for SMERSH. Ooh.
Death to spies. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the original enemies of 007 were thinking, ooh, we bringing SMERSH back for this? Well, we'll find out. In the meantime, we have a couple of 00s getting killed, and then we have Bond getting shot with a paintball gun. Hey, wait, you're dead! And then doing the standard jump on a moving truck with a crate full of explosives in the back that are on fire, and jumps off the parachute, and then one of Eric's favorite opening scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that opening. And it's so Bond. It's such a great Bond opening. You have this whole setup, and you have everything going on, and it's Bond, and that's why I put this one to you as I did, because right from the beginning, and I feel the entire way through, it's more Bond than License to Kill is.
I'm gonna agree with a third of your sentence.
Okay.
And I'm gonna use the line item veto pen. And I'm going to rewrite the sentences from the very beginning. It's Bond. Yes, it is. Especially because after he jumps off the burning truck in his parachute, the truck explodes, and we see a yacht, and there's a woman in a bikini on a phone saying, "If only I could find a real man."
Crash.
He takes the phone, says, "She'll call you back." Reports in, says, "I'll report in an hour. Would you care to join me? Better make that 2. Well, James, you work fast, don't you?" If we don't really want to think about the logic behind all that. It's like, all right, so I was going to report in an hour. Now I said I'm going to need 2, so I got to get the champagne. How do you do? Let's bone, and then I got to be out of here done in under 60 minutes. Wow, dude.
I love that you're trying to figure out the exact logistics of this. He realized that 1 hour wasn't going to be enough because then you'd have to do all that in 20 minutes. So he's like, you know what? I want to give this woman a full hour of my time because that is the kind of guy I am.
Yeah, he's not a cheap hooker. He's an expensive one. Just a gigolo. That's why we love him.
Exactly. I find it fantastic.
And then, of course, we have one of my favorite parts, which Eric is not as impressed with as I am. So there, Eric. I love the theme song. I think the theme song is awesome. Aha. I love this theme song. And the opening sequence, I just think it's cool. It's neon and 80s, and yeah, I dig it.
It is definitely fitting for the time. I would say that is probably the least Bondinessosity factor of anything in this film is that theme song. But it's a fun tune. As we discussed, I believe we discussed when we talked about the theme songs, it's a fun tune. I'm not saying it's a bad tune, but as far as a Bond theme song, it doesn't scream Bond to me. But you know what? I'm willing to give it the go and still say it's up there for me.
Now, one thing that I think none of us is going to dispute while we're on this subject is the score. This is John Barry's last James Bond score. And he even has cameo in the film. And it is one of his best, I think. I really, really enjoy this score. In fact, I have the double-length edition of it that I made sure to buy as soon as I knew it was available, because the music is just fantastic. You have a lot of the classic John Barry cues, because of course he is the still undisputed master of 007's music, having been doing it for not quite since almost the very start, and just fantastic. Just everything about it. And along with that, the themes, the original themes, work very well, mixing in not only the Aha theme song, but also the cues from the secondary themes by the Pretenders. There were actually 2 secondary themes to this. We had If There Was a Man, which was the love theme.
A Mercenary Man?
No, not Mercenary Man. There might have been If There Was a Mercenary Man, though. Ooh.
That would have been fun.
And then the one that gets the most play during the action sequences, the Let's Strangle Someone with a Walkman theme song, Where Has Everybody Gone?
That was the best, because you knew as soon as you started hearing, somebody's about to get dead. Necros is about to take somebody out. It was great because of that. That's what made it so great.
And I really enjoy all of the music, but especially John Barry's score. And with that said, yeah, gotta dig the Pretenders and Aha, man. Come on, take on me.
Take on me. Take me on.
Well, you're a bit taller, but maybe if I bull rush you.
but I'll be gone, so it's all right.
But, okay, awesome music aside, we then move into a sequence which, to me, is the absolute best part of the movie. And one of the best parts of the entire James Bond series. Yeah, see? I'm saying it. We've got the part that actually derives from Ian Fleming's story, The Living Daylights. Surprisingly, there is a part that still derives from Ian Fleming's material.
What? Yeah.
I know. Amazing, right? Because, of course, we're talking about the defection scene of Koskov as he has to escape from the watchful eye of the KGB. So, as he's attending a musical performance during the intermission, he's supposed to be spirited off by the British Secret Service and get away before the KGB can capture him, because, of course, Koskov is a general in the KGB trying to defect. Now, in the actual story, this happened across Berlin, as the wall was going up, and very, very, very tense scene, very well done. It happens in Czechoslovakia, but still no less tense and no less interesting for it. So we have Bond being set up as the sniper, requested by Koskov, because he wants to make sure that whoever the KGB sends to shoot at him ends up dead. And so, as Koskov escapes out the bathroom window to cross the street, during the intermission, we see at the window that the sniper was a woman.
Ooh.
And Bond makes the split-second decision to, instead of killing the sniper, just to shoot the gun out of her hand, deliberately.
As one does.
Now, what the movie does much better than the story did, because this was the only thing about the story I didn't like, was in the story, Bond doesn't do it just because he thinks she's hot. And in the movie, he does it because, in his professional opinion, she's a patsy. There's no way she's a real sniper. And as he says, I only kill professionals.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very, very well done. And then we find out that the agent in charge had the brilliant plan of putting Koskov in the trunk of a car. And Bond's like, oh, you're so full of shit. I have a better plan. And then we go through an amazing Cold War era escape sequence. And this is really the last we're going to see of James Bond, Cold Warrior, during the real Cold War. Because from this point on, the next movie has nothing to do with the Cold War. And the one after that, the Cold War has been over for 4 years. So this is basically our last gasp of looking at the era of the West versus the Soviet Union. So and this is one of the best treats about it, is we get to see this escape sequence where Koskov is put into a maintenance plug in a pipeline that goes from the Eastern Bloc over into Austria. And, of course, then we have the amusing scene that made it to my comedy list of, what kind of girl do you think I am?
That was a fun scene. I love that scene.
Pig? Borscht? What? And then Q waiting on the other side to put him in a Harrier, and Bond and the other agent look at the Harrier as it's taking off across the border as the KGB is searching the trunk of the car, or boot, as they say. So that is, to me, the highlight of the movie. And it's a real close highlight, because, of course, there's one other scene that we'll be talking about in a bit that is also very awesome, but just, I love that whole sequence.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I consider this such a great Bond flick, is that you do have the seriousness of Bond, and the more serious than we have seen in the past, up to this point, as we're watching this movie in 1987 when it comes out, and up to this point, we haven't seen a very serious Bond. We've seen cheeky and, fun, but not really too serious or hardcore. And we're seeing that, but we are still getting what we expect from Bond. We are getting some tongue-in-cheek. We are getting some funny. We are getting some ridiculous, even, when we get to the plot of the villain and such. Not out-of-this-world ridiculous. It's not world domination he's looking for, but still a little bit over the top, which is what we expect. Whereas in comparison, we don't really get that as much in the next film. But we'll talk about that more when we get directly there. But that's why I consider this such a great Bond flick, and I think it's so underrated by so many people. This movie gets skipped over quite a bit when it comes to the Bond films, and I want it to not. I'm crying. No. But yeah, everything you said just points to why I think it's such a great Bond film.
And everything we've been talking about points out to why I get so disappointed later. With that said, I love this movie. I went out of my way to make sure I got an awesome copy of this movie. I really do enjoy it. I think it's underrated. I completely agree. It's just, there's some failings that it has that brought it down on the list. And they're pretty big ones. But they don't happen yet.
All right.
So we move on. And once we get to London, we find out, well, actually the English countryside, we find out that according to General Koskov, the KGB is restarting Schmiertspiernom, so Smersh is coming back to the fore, and therefore we must all be on our guard, and the leader of Schmiertspiernom is the head of the KGB himself, Leonid Pushkin, who took over from General Gogol, since General Gogol has now moved on to be a cultural attaché in his later years. And that's another wonderful thing about this movie, is it does give us a chance to say goodbye to General Gogol. Because, let's face it, we all love General Gogol. Because General Gogol, he's cool.
As one does.
Yes. But now this is the first thing where I'm kind of, Okay, so we're starting Schmiertspiernom again. So the expectation is that because we know this, we assume that the British Secret Service is going to assassinate the head of the KGB.
Right.
Do we want to apply the logic test to this?
It's a Bond movie. Why are we... do we ever apply the logic test?
Sometimes. I mean, the thing is, if this were world domination, giant laser space thing...
I like where you're headed. Go ahead.
Then, no, we do not apply the logic test, because don't need to. But we're grounding this so far into the real world that you start to, because we're talking about assassinating the head of the intelligence service of one of the two most powerful nations on Earth. And so what we're finding out, and this is one of the two reasons why I have to knock this movie down on the list, and why I marked it down where I did, even though I love this movie, is because what we find out is that the villainous plot is an embezzler from the KGB comes up with a disinformation plan to get the British Secret Service to kill his boss and his girlfriend, so that he can get rich off of selling drugs.
I think it was weapons, wasn't it?
Well, weapons and drugs. and take over his boss's job.
As one does.
This strikes me about as much as I want to invade South Korea as a motivation. It's just...
No. I want to invade South Korea as a motive by itself is not bad. The idea that you're going to use a satellite that can destroy literally anything on the planet, and the only thing you're going to use it for is to clear a minefield so that you can do that. That's where that plan becomes ridiculous.
Yes, but you're going to defect to Britain. You're going to fake a defection to Britain so that you can get the best assassin that the West has to murder your girlfriend for you because you're sick of her.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm following along. So far, you've described Tuesday. I don't understand where the confusion is. I'm just playing.
And kill your boss, and then who happens to be the head of the KGB. And you're going to assume that neither they nor the Soviets will figure this out, and that World War III will not break out.
They wouldn't have if it wasn't for Bond.
Well, you're assuming World War III will not break out when the Soviets think that the British have murdered the head of the KGB.
Now, you bring up an interesting point. That's all. It's a very interesting point. I don't have anything to counter it.
Now, one could argue that, well, sure, Whitaker would be happy if World War III would break out, except for the part where we have, unlike in Octopussy, where they thought this through and came up with a really good reason why there will be no use of nuclear weapons. Nobody comes up with that excuse in this movie. There is no way, if Koskov's plan succeeds, that London doesn't turn into a sheet of glass. And that just won't be good for anybody.
Certainly not for anybody in London.
Well, actually, not even for parts of the Soviet Union, because the wind blows that way. I mean, yeah, Scandinavia will think it sucks worse, but still, Leningrad wouldn't have felt very good after that. But the overall plot I trip on it, and perhaps I wouldn't trip on it so much if the villains themselves didn't also suck. Which brings us to the next problem.
Okay.
Whitaker.
Well, okay, I'll give you Whitaker. Yes, he does, but he sucks in a very specific way.
He sucks in a way that makes him look like he should be one of those fat idiots talking about guns on the History Channel.
Exactly, because that is exactly who he would be if he didn't have the money to be who he is instead. That's just it. That is exactly who he's supposed to be. We hate Whitaker because A, he's a raving maniac, gun nut, and just the traditional brash American. But that is exactly what his character is supposed to be. We're supposed to hate him. Nobody likes him. Even the people who work with him don't actually like him. That's why it's so great.
But he's not a Bond villain. He's a Dolph Lundgren villain. He's not a Bond villain. And Jeroen Krabbe, I know they tried to bring him on as a major sleazy villain type for a while. He was the villain in Living Daylights. He was the villain in The Fugitive. He was the villain in The Punisher, or quasi-villain anyway. He was a Lundgren villain, but he failed every time for me. The
first time I watched this movie, I kind of felt the same way. I was just like, oh, this guy is completely unnecessary. This guy is, we don't even need him. We could have this entire plot with you. They could get rid of him. And then I thought about it more, and I'm like, the more I watch this movie, the more times I watch this movie, the more I appreciate Whitaker's character. Yes, I hate him, but I'm supposed to, and that's the whole point. So I actually have come around to the thought. I just knocked my microphone all over the place. Sorry about that. I've come around to the thought process that I actually like Whitaker's character. I don't like Whitaker, but I like the fact that the character is there because it's the driving force that ties everything else together. You don't have this grand plot to get these people assassinated without this guy being in there, with the money and everything else. So when it comes down to it, Whitaker is okay by me.
Okay, I'm going to take this in two parts. For the part where you said all the parts that relate to Whitaker is okay by you, because it needs to be said, I severely question your judgment, sir.
This episode wouldn't be complete if that didn't happen. So I guess that works out.
As far as the point of he's absolutely necessary to the plot that they have written down, yes, he is. Which is why I wish they would have rewritten it. Because you bring out Smersh as a red herring.
Yes,
so
that's great. That's so great if you think about it. You're like, everybody's like, oh man, especially if you've read the books and you're like looking at this like, oh yeah, okay, Smersh is back. We're going to get into this. And then, oh, no, just kidding. That to me is I love that, actually. The fact that they use that they twisted it around on us like that. So I'm okay with that.
That to me is turning around to somebody and saying, oh, fuck you. You break out Smersh and it's a plot to kill the guy's boss and girlfriend. I mean, again, this is a Dolph Lundgren villain. We can do better than this. And I might have even gone along with it if it weren't for the fact that the last third of the movie just kind of coasts. All the really great tension and pacing basically takes a dump and dies the moment we get to Afghanistan. Now, that's a metaphor for our times, isn't it? But I thought the whole movie just falls. It's great. I really love the first 2/3 of this movie. Then it flattens out. I don't hate it, but it's just there. And with what came before it, all of the awesomeness that came before it, I feel so disappointed at that point. Because this movie deserved better. It deserved a better plot. It deserved a better villain. It deserved a better third act.
I will admit things do slow down a bit when they go through that whole phase in Afghanistan.
The one where they fought the Taliban?
Yeah. That part could have been just a smidge shorter, like maybe a minute, like total. I will admit, but that's the setup that gets us onto the plane, and that's a fun scene.
The plane scene is all right. It's the one part about Afghanistan that's okay, is the plane sequence. And I also like the coda on which it ends, where Timothy Dalton does prove he can still make jokes. Yeah, I know a good restaurant in Karachi. And I also liked, this also happened while they were in Afghanistan, where he says, "Are you calling me a horse's ass?" Plays nicely. But just that from the point where they land in Afghanistan, minus the plane sequence, and then up through what comes after, is just flat. And with so much excitement built up at the beginning of the movie, and then in the post-credit sequence with the escape, and then in a sequence that we haven't talked about yet, but we've talked about very recently, the movie deserved better. It deserved more, and it deserved better villains along the way. The best villain in this movie was Necros, as far as I was concerned. Choking someone with a Walkman, now that's 80s. That is totally 80s.
It is, though, isn't it?
He's also the only one who actually looked menacing. He's the only one who actually looked like he was worthy of Bond's attention as anything but a spitting target. So, once again, we have the henchman saving the day.
But that's kind of how I feel about a true Bond villain should be. I don't necessarily like it when the Bond villain, the main villain, is physically a match for Bond. I want.
You don't
Bond
like it when he jumps at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge with an axe?
Well, that's Christopher Walken. So I mean, it's
I'm evil.
It's different. But with this, I like the Bond villain to supposedly be the smart one, to be the one thinking of things, but needs muscle, because we always want Bond to be the one who transcends all of that, who's like, okay, well, I'm here and I can fight, I can shoot, and I can think my way out of things as well. That for me is what makes a complete Bond movie, and I think we get that here. I think we get a villain who is not a physical match for Bond. He's a bit of a pansy. I mean, you think about the scene where they're putting him in the pig to shoot him through the tube, and he's freaking out. He's not a physical match for Bond by any stretch of the imagination. And he's also not quite a thinking match for Bond, because Bond does figure it out, which is the point to the story, even though, Bond traditionally, in many of the movies and definitely in the books, stumbles into things quite a bit. He doesn't always outthink the opponent so much as he does get lucky or has someone on his side who outthinks. But, that for me, it still fit in with the theme of a Bond movie for me. The fact that the villains weren't the overpowering physical side of things. They had a henchman to take care of that business for them, and a good one at that. Necros is a fantastic henchman. I loved him. So, for me, it still holds up. Yes, it does slow down a bit in the Afghanistan scene. I will admit that. But I think it does pick up again to close out strong.
I don't think it closes out strong. I think that his final fight with Whitaker is really disappointing. It's very short. It's not filmed very well, to be honest. It's just not exciting. I mean, you can do cinematography in small spaces well, and that's just, it's there. It doesn't suck, but it's, for a Bond climax, I expect way better than that. To the point where when it happens, you actually pause for a second and say, wait, that was it? Oh, we still got one more. Oh, he's just going to walk in and they're just going to say, send him back in the diplomatic bag? That's all we get? It just felt flat. It felt like this deserved more.
I don't know. I felt that it closed out well. You see, that's where we question each other's judgment the most, I guess, is the third act of this particular film.
Yeah, because I love everything before the third act, except for, of course, the parts that involve the setup of the what the villain's plot ends up being. But it's just that third act is so disappointing, and I'm judging it more harshly. I'm judging the third act more harshly because I love the rest of the film and it deserves better. Especially considering, because we do have to bring it up again, because if we're going to discuss this movie, we have to point out that it has one of the best chase scenes in the entire series.
Cello case, anyone?
Yes. Cello. There's always room for cello.
There's always room for a cello case. A cello case chase.
Yes. But even before the cello, we have optional extras installed.
Yeah, that's what I loved about that chase scene, is that it was a long chase scene, but you never felt bored by it. I've seen chase scenes in movies where it's long, it's like, okay, we got like 15 minutes to chase, but it's like 15 minutes of the same thing, and that gets real boring real fast. Whereas with that chase scene, I felt that it changed up enough over the course of its existence to really make a fun, good chase scene.
Yeah, I mean, we start with the car, the part where we knew it had to happen because, one, it was featured in the previews, but also just awesomeness because it had a few optional extras installed. Missiles, outriggers, yay! And then when the car's tires get shot out, that's okay, we'll just cut a big hole in the ice.
Yeah, no worries.
When it's time to blow up the car, we'll run, and then we'll sit in the cello case, use the Stradivarius cello as an oar. And in a takeoff of the standard James Bond ski chase, we'll make our way across the border and toss the cello over the guardrail as we slide under. That's just fantastic.
We have nothing to declare except the cello.
And the cello is only worth a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a Stradivarius. It's they all have names, So yeah, I love that scene. I absolutely love that scene. It's just a fun chase scene. It's a fun scene in a movie, and it is a welcome bit of lightness in this otherwise darker Bond that we've got in this film. So I'm perfectly okay with it existing in this film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that scene. And again, the fact that scene is so awesome makes me even more disappointed in the final fight. Because, okay, you could do this, and then you just don't care enough on the final fight? I mean, yeah, I understand that Jodan Baker isn't exactly in the same fighting shape he was when he played Buford Pusser, but still, if you didn't know, that's actually his signature career role was Buford Pusser in Walking Tall. But it's just, again, that third act. Damn.
I sense disappointment on your side. What's that about?
Yes.
And I can understand that. I mean, if I were to say this was the perfect Bond movie, then obviously it would have been even higher on my list than it was. It's not the perfect Bond movie ever. It does have its problems. It does have its issues. However, when push comes to shove, when I have to rate these two movies, when we're talking about the Dalton flicks, I will put Living Daylights as a better Bond film than License to Kill every day of the week.
And that's where I questioned your judgments.
Yes, indeed. That is where we question each other's judgment. So, do we want to jump into it then? And you can tell me why I'm wrong about License to Kill?
I'll just, one last perhaps repetitious note. We end with, because this being the 80s, we're now moving into closing credits theme music as well. And so we end up with The Pretenders' If There Was a Man, which the instrumental version of which is a love theme for the movie called Into Vienna, John Barry's score version of it, and just beautiful, beautiful, fantastic song the kind of thing where you wish someone would think this about you in real life. And if you're a woman, just switch the genders on it. It works. Or don't switch the genders if that's how you swing. That's fine too. Just really, really beautiful song. I love all of the music here. And I think that very much is also a great Bond love theme as well.
All right. Well, I can't disagree with you. I think it's a great song as well. And I dig it.
All right.
With a huge shovel. Can you dig it?
Well, we're talking about the Pretenders.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So that is The Living Daylights, which, again, I love the movie. It was one of the first Bond movies I bought on Blu-ray because I love the movie. I'm just really disappointed in the third act. And in the hair splitting, that's what makes it rank lower on my The list. As opposed to the movie Eric questioned my judgment on, License to Kill, which still didn't crack my top 10, but which I thought was better than The Living Daylights.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. License to Kill is a movie. It's an 80s movie. It's an 80s action movie. It doesn't necessarily flip that switch for me as a Bond flick, and that's where I think I questioned your judgment the most. But I'm curious to know, why am I wrong? Tell me. Go ahead.
Well,
I
actually did because before we when we did the prep for this episode, not only did we say what movie we wanted the other one to reconsider, but we explained why. And as I told you, Eric gave me the cheap ear of instructions. He said because it's better than License to Kill, and that was all he said.
All right.
Whereas I asked Eric to treat License to Kill like a fine wine, and I don't think he did that, based on how he's continuing to discuss it.
We haven't gotten into the full discussion yet, so you have no idea.
Fair enough. But just leading up to it, that's the vibe I'm getting. Unless you're just hitting me with the vibe you started with, in which case it's cool. I'm okay with that. But no, what I asked him to approach the film from the perspective not just a great 80s action movie, which it is, but also to look at it as an essential Bond film that is a direct sequel, granted set many, many years later, but in terms of the effect of the events, a direct sequel to the story of On Her Majesty's Secret Service that also happens to include many elements of classic Ian Fleming literature that had not been used in previous films that it could have been used in. So we have treats all around. We have Bondy nososity that could be appreciated by the movie fan of 007, and Bondy nososity that can be appreciated by fans of Ian Fleming's original material, and we have a great 80s action movie. So I asked him to take all of the complex notes, swish them together, and enjoy them as a fine wine. That was how I asked him to approach License to Kill. Let's see if he did it.
Instead, I just got drunk on Mad Dog 2020. No, this is a great 80s action film. As I've admitted, it's got a great storyline. You've got this drug dealer bad guy who is, traditional, typical 80s bad guy in a movie. Doesn't scream Bond villain to me when the way he uses sharks to his advantage. Yes, that's Bond villain-esque right there, for sure. I'll give him that. But other than that, it's just kind of typical movie villain-esque. It doesn't scream Bond villain-esque. He's not trying to take over he's not even trying to take over anybody else's territory. He's not even trying to expand or anything like that. He's just making money, and that's it. Nothing special about anything that he's doing, really. So there's no megalomania action going on over here. He's just he's making a big deal, yes, but it's just a big drug deal. It's not anything out of the ordinary. So as far as the villain goes, you've got a good 80s action villain, but to me, you don't necessarily have a Bond villain yet.
See, if you're stopping there, that's one point that I vehemently disagree with you on. Are you stopping there when you're talking about the villain?
Okay, yes.
Okay, because what makes him a Bond villain is that he fed James Bond's best friend to a shark.
Okay, that is true. And I said his use of shark was very Bond villain-esque.
And he murdered his best friend's wife immediately after they got married.
But to be fair, yes, he did that. He did not do that knowing it was James Bond's best friend's wife. Or even that James Bond was a factor in this scenario. He had no clue who James Bond was. He did that because Felix Leiter was working with the DEA to bust his drug operation.
But it doesn't matter, because what we got is a setup where James Bond has to relive the trauma of Blofeld murdering his wife.
Now, if they had...
Right after they got married. And they even reference it.
Barely,
in case you
though.
weren't noticing it.
Barely, though. Like, they should have played that up much, much more. One throwaway line mentioning he was married once, but that was a long time ago, or something to that effect.
Being a Bond film, you're expected to have seen the others. Now I grant you, a lot of people have not done that. I mean, we've noticed that amongst our own fellow Fern co-hosts. Still disappointed in you, Renfro. But
no wonder he picked as he did for the music episode. He hadn't actually seen the movies, so he had no clue.
But the thing, even if you haven't seen them all, and then no, you're not going to get this part. But we have, so we have no excuse. We know this in advance. And frankly, I don't want them to pile it on thick. Because if you because at that point you pile it on too thick and it becomes onerous. And that's even more annoying. Whereas you're expected to know this in advance, and if you aren't getting the hint on your own, then that one line is going to clue the James Bond fan in as to, in case you forgot, this happened before, and this is going to be important. So if we were just looking at this as casual 80s movie fans, we wouldn't even be having this discussion because we agree that this is a great 80s action movie. Now, as Bond fans, we have no excuse to not make the connection because we should know better. And we're even given that gentle push in case we forgot that this happened and this is going to be really important. And what could possibly cause James Bond to tell M no? To say, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to go do my own thing.
I'm going to do me,
could drive
you do
him
you.
over the edge?
And I get that. I do. And that is part of the reason, this movie wasn't like on the bottom of my list or anything. It's just, that for me wasn't enough. Just that one little thing. And that's a lot of jumping to conclusions you have to do on your own that the movie doesn't do for you to get to that point. You get one line when they talk about him having been married once. If you don't know, then the rest of it is just like, okay, I guess that was his friend, so I guess he's mad about it. If you do know, then you're like, okay, now I know why he's mad. But that's it. That's all you get.
But if you don't know, then it doesn't matter. Then you're watching this as an action movie.
Yes, and that's fine.
And the list doesn't concern you. We're here as Bond fans. And therefore, we take that extra leap. And I don't need them to spoon-feed it. I mean, when you watch Skyfall, did you need everything from Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace spoon-fed back to you? No.
Of course not.
Did we really need all the events of Casino Royale spoon-fed back to us for Quantum of Solace? Go on, call me a hypocrite for asking that question.
It is pretty much a direct sequel, yes. I will give you that. And if you didn't see Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace might not make much sense by itself. But again,
that was the other movie I thought Eric was going to make us watch, by the way.
No, I agree with you on that one. I still rank it a little bit higher than you do, I feel. Because even though, I don't know, Casino Royale is just such a great film, I can't imagine watching Quantum of Solace without having watched Casino Royale at some point in the recent past. I just can't imagine anybody doing that. So for me, it ranks higher because I always tie the two together at least within a couple of weeks of each other at the absolute latest. Like when I'm rewatching the movies, Casino Royale always wins out over Quantum of Solace, so I'm going to watch it first. But Quantum of Solace always finds its way in there pretty shortly after because I want to see it. But I get what you say about that. That's not the issue here. I mean, if we want to look at, that's two movies that are back to back being somewhat reliant upon the previous film. Whereas this is a movie that, in order for you to make the argument you're making, it's very reliant on a film from quite a few years previous, with a lot of movies in between that a lot of people may not have seen, and a lot of people, whether or not they want to admit it, probably didn't enjoy the first time they saw it, even though now it's cool cool and popular to have liked that movie, evidently. I still
don't
not
call
100%.
Anyone a hipster.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't fully understand it. I don't fully understand the love for that film. But the fact of the matter is, most people watching License to Kill probably either hadn't seen that or had seen it a long time prior and not recently. Whereas
but that's what makes it such a treat for us. They made it for us.
Yeah, and I don't deny that part. I do think that was a nice little nod to the Bond fans in the audience. But I think there was much more nods to the, hey, you know what? There's probably just going to be a lot of people who want to see an 80s action flick, so let's just do that, and we'll sprinkle in a little bit of Bond here and there. Whereas what I feel they should have done is made a Bond movie with a little bit of 80s action sprinkled in here or there. And I think they went the other way around, and that's why I think it's not as good.
And that's why you rate A View to a Kill so highly, is it?
You know what? We're not talking about A View to a Kill right now, okay? That is not on the menu. View to a Kill has got its own...
from the movie Tombstone that just come to mind on both of our parts. We're both doing it. So I hope the regular members of our audience who realize how we're catching each other on each other's hypocrisy is so funny. So I do hope our regular audience members enjoy it. And for those of you who are listening to for the first time, who may not have seen the original, then this becomes even more meta. It's almost Inception-like. It's kind of interesting.
This is a podcast within a podcast within a podcast that we've got going on here.
And we'll be podcasting again.
Oh, yeah. No, I want to make sure that everybody knows I like this movie. I really do like this movie, and I feel it is very underrated.
I'm pretty sure I said that about 20 minutes ago.
Exactly. I mean, it's literally, I feel the same way about this as you do about The Living Daylights. I want everybody to understand, I like this movie. I think it's a fun film. And I don't think it should be, like, this movie should be banished from the lexicon of Bond films because it's not Bond enough for me. And that's not the case either. I don't feel that way about it. It's more just, I don't even know how to describe it. I just don't feel it's Bondy enough to be better than The Living Daylights when considered as a Bond film. And that's really where, as far as my question judgment came into it, it was specifically between these two movies. So I'm actually glad that your choice for me was this one because otherwise it would have made for a weird episode. But this one... the fact, because that was my direct comparison. That was my question judgment to you, was these two movies. I feel The Living Daylights is a better Bond film than License to Kill. Now, I'm not saying that it's a better film all around, or that it's specifically, way better. Like, okay, License to Kill should be like at the bottom of the list, and Living Daylights should be way up at the top. But I do feel they should be closer to each other, first of all, and nearer to the front of the list.
As far as positioning on the list goes, again, after the 3 or 4 at the bottom, we're hair splitting until we get to the top few. So if we redid the list today, I don't think we'd come up with the same list we came up with for the episode.
Very doubtful.
If we do it again at Christmas, it won't be the same list we come up with today. I think it's a week to week. Things vary, and the spots at the bottom will probably be about the same.
I would say the bottom and the top. Yeah. The bottom and the top would probably stay about the same. As we discussed, both of us, the top 3 are kind of flexible. They could theoretically, shift and change, but not by much. But that whole middle section, 18 or so movies in the middle.
Including these two?
Exactly. Absolutely, those could shift and change all around, really kind of hither or thither.
Though, I do think I'm still rating License to Kill higher. And it's simply because, oddly enough, the bonding necessity. Because you have such a personal story with Bond going for revenge after reliving the trauma of his own wife's murder. And not only that, but as Bond fans who have read the novels, we get the treat of, how is Felix dealt with? Oh, exactly like he is in the book for Live and Let Die. He's fed to a shark, which is why he then has a mechanical hand and an artificial leg from then on in.
He disagreed with something that ate him.
Yes. And we also have a callback to the Hildebrand rarity. We have Milton Crest, and we also have, even though it's kind of nasty to watch, but when Sanchez breaks out the whip, that's the stingray tail from the Hildebrand rarity.
Which is just you. And now, in rewatching this, there is one thing that really just kind of stuck out and bugged the hell out of me. And I don't know why this bugged me as much as it did, but the continuity between the direction in which he was whipping her and the marks that were left on her when Bond sees them were completely opposite directions, and it bugged me way more than it probably should have.
I'm having flashbacks to a chase scene through Las Vegas. Except this is way creepier.
It's one of those things, I'm watching the movie and I'm like, wait a minute. When he had her
if
over...
you whipped her, then her scars
like,
should be...
But he had her over and he was using his left hand and he was like, it was straight down, like towards her legs. And then when Bond sees the marks, they're crossways, like a traditional like whipping would be, except I'm like, and it really took me a moment to like get back into the movie after that, and I was like, oh, I'm thinking about this way too much.
Well,
far too much.
Now we know what special scenes Eric pays attention to.
Well, it's funny is I only noticed it, after fifth or what is this, the sixth or seventh time probably watching this movie, if not more, and like suddenly I noticed that. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And then for like 5 or 10 minutes of movie, I'm thinking, but
5 or 10 minutes? Oh my God.
It bugged me. It bugged me way more than it should. I admit that the amount of bugging was larger than it should have been. But it bugged me still. Come on, makeup artists. You have one job. Okay, maybe you have more than one job, but at least one of your jobs is this.
Eric Dewey, whipping connoisseur.
Hey. Let's not talk about personal business.
Well, on that note, I'll share one of my favorite S&M jokes of all time. Really, it's very quick. The masochist said, "Hurt me." The sadist said, "No."
Oh, ouch. Oh, that's harsh. Like, I'm thinking about that.
If you don't get it, think about it a little bit more. And no, I know Eric got it, but I'm just saying, if anyone out there didn't get it, just turn that over in your brain a few times and it'll come to you.
Ooh, interesting choice of words there.
It's a subtle joke, but it works.
It's a slow burn, but it'll get there. But yeah, well, and honestly, that scene was almost completely unnecessary. I mean, well, not the entire scene, but the part of him whipping her was unnecessary. They could have achieved the same result having just shown her maybe backhanding her and giving her a quick slap or something like that. The importance of that scene was the fact that he had the guy with whom she was cheating on him with had his heart cut out. Like, that was the important part of the scene. The whipping was like secondary and almost like, wait, why is this happening? Why are we seeing this right now?
The reason was, and I'm going to hand one back to you, the reason that scene was important, there were two reasons, actually. One was so we could have the stingray tail. So for the people who had bothered to read that story by Ian Fleming, all 100 of us.
I was about to say, I mean, that is catering to a pretty small audience, I think, at this point.
But that's one of the things I love about this, is this gives us the time of day. I think about all the comic book movies, where they throw in the little references that only the people who've read this particular issue of the comic that was not included in the mega omnibus version would get this little reference. And people just swoon over these things. Well, here we go. We get to swoon over these little things in just these little details. But I think the other and major point of that scene was exactly the point that bothered you so much, was so we could see her scars later. Because that would give Bond something to react to think about, to be disgusted by. As if he wasn't disgusted enough already. So it's adding to the urge overkill, but I think that's the point of the scene.
And I can understand that, although I don't like it, but I can understand that, I suppose. But if they were going to do that, and they really wanted me to think about that, they should have gotten the scars right so that I wouldn't have been taken out of the moment.
I'm not going to disagree. I'm just going to say that I didn't care that the car came out the alley the wrong way, so I don't necessarily care here. But I get it. I do get it, because I do catch those kinds of details myself. If I was going to spend 5 minutes thinking about it, which I now have, obviously, since we've been talking about it for about that long.
Sorry about that.
But I'd wait until the movie was over to do it.
It's just, and again, I watched this movie several times without having noticed that. It was just this last time through when I was watching it specifically for this episode. I was like, hey, wait a minute. Those are horizontal. But wait a minute. It was literally one of those situations where I was like, hey, this just doesn't add up quite right, and I don't know why it's bothering you as much as it is, but it is. So, there you have it.
Fair enough.
The things that bother me.
Then, of course, the villain that we did grab from one of Ian Fleming's stories, Milton Crest, he is one of those who, like Whitaker, were designed to specifically hate. Casting of Anthony Zerbe, who is an actor who he's a fine actor. He plays exactly the parts that are written for him, and he usually plays a-holes. So it's just, I'm sure he's a wonderful man in person. I just can't think of any time I've seen him on the screen where I didn't want to slap his character. And this is one of them. And that's fine, because that's how he's supposed to be. Go on, hit me with the hypocrite glove. Go ahead. Do it.
Well, here's my thing with Crest in this movie. I feel he's entirely forgettable. Like, basically, he's just the guy who, to me, he comes off as stupid. He made a point to talk about the fact that Sanchez had a dude's heart cut out for messing with his girl. And then later, he tries to mess with the dude's girl. How stupid do you have to be? You know the dude will cut your heart out.
He was drunk.
This is a dude who will cut your heart. I don't care. I would have to be falling down to the point of passing out drunk to not think, hey, you know what? This girl might get my heart literally cut out of my chest. Not figuratively, literally. And at that point, hey, I'm blacking out. I can't do anything about it, so I'm good. Like, seriously, like, to me, that's what this character comes off as, is just a henchman who is dumb as a box of rocks and is saved only by the fact that, you know, somebody came in and rescued him from himself at that point because he was destined for a far worse fate just by virtue of him being a dick.
So, he's both more of an asshole and more of a functional alcoholic than you are.
And somehow I'm okay with that.
I'm sure your family is too, really.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but for me, he was an entirely forgettable villain. I didn't even really consider him a villain. He was a henchman, if at best.
For me, he was exactly as slimy as he needed to be. And so he worked. Now, if he were a more elevated villain, like, say, a Whitaker...
I see where you're going with this.
Then I'd have had problems. But at the level of somebody who's going to die in a decompression chamber halfway through the movie, I'm good with him. In fact, I'm happy to see him die in a decompression chamber. It even kind of fits his face. But
sick burn. I will admit, that was another moment when I felt that Sanchez kind of put that foot over the line into Bond villain from just standard 80s villain. Yeah, I know there are other 80s action
flicks. Great
flicks.
Pun.
What about money, boss? Launder it.
Yes!
That was fun. I will admit that. It didn't scream Bond to me, but the actual, killing him in the decompression chamber by, literally exploding his face, that was very Bondy. That had some Bondiness also.
And the launder it was also very Bondy.
Yes. Well, that way. I mean, if any pun is Bond-like, then yes, I guess.
A pun immediately upon somebody's death? Okay. Yes. I mean... It's much better than thinking about it at 4 a.m. after, don't you agree?
I can't believe he fell for that. Oh, man. Yes.
Text from last night.
We'll have to we'll have to post that comic up on the Facebook page so people know what we're talking about. I came across a comic on Reddit that had Bond searching for a pun at the moment of killing the villain and couldn't quite find it. So it was very humorous, and I will go ahead and post it up on the Facebook page. I'll have to dig around because I want to... Anytime I post something on the Facebook, I like to give proper attribution if at all possible. So I've got to dig around and see if that particular artist is on Facebook and can tag him in the post. I'm not trying to claim it as my own or anything like that.
And I think our fellow Fern host, Mr. Barry, will very much appreciate you for that.
Yeah, that's something I've always tried to do. I've posted several things on various Facebook pages associated with the network, and if I can find the source, I will credit the source.
And it's a very good thing. We encourage that in everybody. It's good behavior.
Yeah, it builds relationships, I think, because you end up with people who are willing to share with you later if you are willing to share with them now.
Yes. And speaking of sharing, we have the Bond girl. And, okay, now this is a point where I think hands down, Living Daylights totally wins over this movie. Because Lupe is a stupid gold digger. I mean, that's all she is. We know this. She sees a man who she thinks might give her a better lot in life. She's in bed. Boom. And she's admitted that's how she's gone for her whole life. And you know what? For people in some desperate circumstances, I understand that that's how life really is. It's not how life should be, but it ends up being how life turns out. And I'm not judging her. I'm just saying that in terms of Bond women, if you have Lupe versus Cara Milovi totally wins. That's what I'm saying. And because, let's face it, on the Bond girl scale, stupid gold digger doesn't get you very far, except usually dead. It's amazing she doesn't end up dead. And then we have Pam Bouvier, who to me is one of the most disappointing of the Bond girls.
I'm like, are you going to defend her? I'm just waiting for this, but no, okay.
The only thing I'm going to defend, and I would hope that our regular listeners don't judge me as a pig for this, because you should know better, because you've heard me talk longer than this, but I'll defend that she makes the most boring beige slip look really good.
Yes.
She does.
I will not dispute that she looks good in this film.
And that's one of the most frustrating things, is that's one of my most positive takeaways for her, because I've seen her other work. I used to watch Law and Order a lot.
Was she in one of the which Law and Order? Was she in the original or? Because I don't recall her, but then again,
she was one of the assistant district attorneys after a while.
Okay, in like the original.
I can't now. I'm pretty sure it was
the
original. They all merge after a while. But
they do kind of. But I've never watched any of the original. That's why I asked. I've only ever watched Special Victims Unit and a couple episodes of Criminal Intent. I've never seen any of the original.
Yeah, I believe it was the original. And she's very good, which is why it's so disappointing that you have this character who is originally introduced as a badass. You get her resume, and she's a bush pilot. She's a mercenary woman.
Mercenary woman. It's so sad that we both break into song anytime the word mercenary is noted.
She might have even gone on laser missions for all we know.
Pew, pew, pew.
And so she's this big badass standing up to a drug dealer. And right after we get this description of her character, and she shows up with a shotgun, she then cries at the drop of a hat.
That's
often
why I was so disappointed in her character. She was so... It was this, and then that, and then this, and then that. It's like, pick a character and stick with it.
Yes.
I was very disappointed in Pam Bouvier.
And it's not Carrie Lowell's fault. She's doing what was written, and I've seen her other work. I know she can do better, and with this script, she really wouldn't have been able to, because the character was obviously written by men who probably don't have that many meaningful conversations with women. Because...
Or they were just trying to channel Ian Fleming.
Who probably didn't have very many meaningful conversations with non-doormatted women. Because introduced as a badass, cries at the drop of a hat, and then, I'm a feminist, why can't you be my secretary? And then cries at the drop of a hat. And it's just she just wusses out so much.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate, because both the actress and us... and really, everything deserves better than what we got from her. And so, yeah, the Bond girls, disappointing in this movie. On the other hand, we have, in the midst of another disappointment involving James Bond saying, yeah, he'll have a Bud Light.
I wasn't even going to bring that up. I wasn't. But since you bring it up, I mean, what kills the Bondinosity faster than Bond drinking a Bud?
That's just it. He never gets to the point of drinking the Bud.
Well,
he just agrees to order it.
Even that should have been cause for alarm.
Yes, but we already have him in a honky-tonk style titty bar.
But that's okay, because we get a honky-tonk style titty bar brawl, which we both agreed was a good scene. So I'm not complaining about that part.
I mean, bar brawl in a titty bar. I mean, yeah, it's not the fully classic 80s titty bar because, of course, we're not showing off boobs, but it's as close as we're ever going to get in a Bond movie. And it's just fantastic to see this happen. And shotgun blast blows outside of cheap walls so we can jump into boat. And amazingly, even though the shotgun blast is powerful enough to blow out the side of the wall, it does not blow up the engine of the boat that's immediately on the other side of it.
Well, yeah, because that would be illogical.
Of course it would. Kind of like inserting the "Why don't you ask" tagline into the movie, because we have that song at the end and we have to have some kind of thing to tie into it, even though the line never makes sense. Ever. Whenever they say it. The "Why don't you wait till you're asked?" Well, why don't you ask? What?
Wait, what? Are you still talking? I don't understand what's happening right now.
Just, But of course, it's meant to refer to the song, which now everybody associates with Celine Dion because she remade it. But no, it was originally done by Patti LaBelle as the end credits of this movie, If You Ask Me To, which I have to say is probably the best song on the soundtrack. I'm not saying that it's great, but because...
You're saying in comparison
to the rest of the soundtrack.
Of what we've got to deal with, yeah.
Because this is, of course, post John Barry. This is... Now, bear in mind, I own this soundtrack, and I was happy to buy it when it came out on cassette. So, and also, I saw License to Kill at least once a week. Every single week, it was out in the theaters the first time it was out. That was one of the great summers for movies.
Dang, that's a lot. That's like me with Princess Bride and the original Batman. I call it the original
summer
Batman,
as the original Batman, and I also saw that movie at least once a week. Every week it was out.
Oh, that was a great film. Oh man.
Yes, this was a golden summer. You had Batman, you had this film, you had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
That was 89, really?
Yes.
That seems so modern in comparison to these,
You had Lethal Weapon 2.
Wow, 2?
Yes.
I am so old.
Yeah, I hate to break this to you, but Steven Seagal's best movies, the good ones, they've been old enough to drink for a few years now. Sad, isn't it?
You said Steven Seagal's good movies.
He had 5 of them. The first 5 are good.
I really liked that one, Executive Decision. That was my favorite Steven Seagal movie. For any of you who have seen that, you know why that's funny.
He dies in the first 15 minutes.
Spoiler alert, gosh.
And that was when his career took a shit.
And that was the good part of the movie. Yeah, it was a little rough. But...
Okay, Time Cop is old enough to drink now.
Oh, don't you ever say a bad word about Time Cop.
I'm not. I'm saying it's old enough to drink now.
That makes me sad.
It's 21 years old, dude.
Oh, man, that was such a great movie, though. Oh, that was a fun movie right there.
Epic Splits.
Fun movie. Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt. Oh, man. And Mia Sara. Oh, Mia Sara. Anyways, I digress dramatically. But everything you said really points to why I can't rate this one higher on the Bond scale than The Living Daylights. It is a good film. I'm not disputing that, and I hope anybody who's listening understands that. We've both said that both of these movies are good movies that are underrated in the, common Bond-verse, as it would be. We need to come up with a better name for that. We need a good name for Bond fans. What's a good name for Bond fans? Like, so many other fandoms have like cool names. Like, if you're a fan of Firefly, you get to be the Brown Coats. If you're Hoovians and such.
If I dare say this, do we need a label?
I don't want a label. I just. Oh no, you didn't. I didn't mean like that. I didn't mean a label like for other people to put on us, but a label for us to put upon ourselves. A label that we want.
What's wrong with Bond fans?
Okay, that's fine, but I mean, it just seems so blah. We'll think of something, and if you have an idea of what fans of the Bond universe should adopt as their own moniker, please drop us a line at facebook.com/HerMajesty'sPod or on Twitter @HerMajesty'sPod. or comment on this episode at hermajestiespod.com, or email me. You can find me at eric@foureyedradio.com, or email Ziggy directly.
Yes, you can email me at ziggy@cinemaontherocks.com. You can also tweet me at cinemaotr. And hey, while you're at it, check out all the reviews I have written on cinemaontherocks.com, including reviews for every Bond movie that's been released as of the date that we're recording this podcast, except for one. And that's just because no matter how many times I see The World Is Not Enough, I just never get around to writing the review.
So you have to watch it again now to do the review, or have you watched it enough times at this point that you can do the review without a rewatch?
Well, that's an interesting question. This is a point of critics' ethics.
Oh.
I have seen it enough times, I could write a review right now, and I'd be fine. My preference is to write reviews of movies I've seen within no more than 2 weeks of when I see it. That's my preference. If, with that said, as it sometimes happened that it's been a little longer, like the one I posted today, yeah. But if there's any question that I don't remember a part of it at all, I have to rewatch it. So, now that said, the one I posted today for another movie, Transporter Refueled, if you're wondering, I saw it 3.5 weeks ago, but I still remember it quite well, so I was fine with that.
All right. Well, 3 weeks isn't too long in comparison. So, yeah, get on that. Get the Bond reviews finalized. For crying out loud. I'm just kidding.
I know.
I know, right?
However, back to License to Kill.
Yes.
So, you discussed the merits of titty bars.
Yeah, as the scene for an epic bar brawl involving James Bond? Hell yeah.
Yeah, see? So, some 80s action can be good. And I also like the little cameo from Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa. I thought that was a nice touch. I just really enjoy him as an actor. So the chance to see him dropped into a Bond film for any reason at all was cool.
All right.
So, and that leads into, well, we're going to be talking a bit more about what the scenes that involve him could have turned into in a near future episode, I think, that I haven't dropped the show notes to Eric for yet.
I'm like, what are you talking about? But okay.
But it would lead to something interesting if we made a little switch and possibly didn't have Hiroyuki Tagawa in here. Because, as we know, License to Kill was the swan song for Timothy Dalton, and it was the last film before the soft reset, because it wasn't a reboot. The soft reset, that was GoldenEye 6 years later. But I think this could have been...
Which was not entirely... We can't pin that on Dalton not being popular. There was a whole... That was really when that whole legal situation was really coming to a head. So
yeah, it really had nothing to do with Dalton. They were happy to have Dalton back, and it just got to the point where Dalton got sick of waiting.
Yeah, Dalton's like, it's been 6 years, guys. For real? Are you guys serious right now?
Yeah, so I got to be done now, and I understand that. So, but I think that this could have been set up as the end of classic Bond, setting up for a hard reset. But we can talk about that at a different time. But I love the idea of Bond actually going undercover in a way where the villain doesn't see through his ass immediately. Because every time he goes undercover...
It takes a whole 5 minutes this time.
In any of the other movies, the villain knows who he is the moment he shows up. But in this case, he's got him fooled. Right up until they're taking the tour of the cocaine factory and Dario points him out. Speaking of, how about that young Benicio del Toro that nobody saw coming?
Oh my gosh, what a baby. What a baby face, Benicio del Toro right there. Oh my goodness. But yeah, like I said, yeah, he fools Sanchez for, all of 5 minutes until...
More than 5 minutes. He fools him for more than half the movie.
Yeah, okay, but still, the point is, he's got Sanchez fooled, but Toro's character has already seen him, so he knows him. He knows exactly what's up. He's like, hey, boss, by the way. Actually, that's the problem, and that's probably the only reason Bond even came close to getting away, is that Dario, the character by Benicio del Toro, I can never say his name right because I'm not Hispanic enough, I guess, I don't know. Dario's character just kind of chooses to take him on his own instead of being like, hey, boss, by the way. He just kind of pulls him to the side and says, okay, here's what we're going to do, and gives Bond the opportunity for escape.
He does talk to his boss, though, and his boss is okay with it. So, and then they start the interrogation by the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
But he is damn effective as a henchman. In fact,
I
if
would have loved
anything,
to see
he's
more of him.
underused.
Yeah, exactly. I would have loved to see more of him as a henchman. I think he was built up. Even the other characters like, oh my god, you got to watch out for that guy. He's insane. He's crazy. But we don't get to see enough of him being him to really believe that character could be that bad. Like, we know because we're looking at it in the future, looking back, being like, oh hey, that's a good actor right there, and he's doing something cool. But in the film, he's underutilized.
He's underutilized, but when he's there, he owns a screen. I will say that.
Absolutely.
And at a time when film studios were treating young Hispanic males with slick back hair as dime a dozen, the fact that he can stand out like that says something. And it's just he's breaking past a Hollywood prejudice that audiences were set up for and still standing out as being awesome. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely cannot fault his acting in this film whatsoever. He definitely showed what he was going to become in the future. And
I do like the casino scene, and I think this is the one place where Lupe's character works, where she shows up as the dealer, and he's like, and so am I going to win or lose? Going to lose, but not much. I thought that worked very well. It was a very good scene. Always fun to see Bond in a casino, of course. And where he's being very particular about his drink, and then he just leaves it behind and leaves Ms. Bouvier to down it herself. Thought that was fun.
Yeah, definitely a good interaction between the two of them, which we don't get enough of, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of stuff we don't get enough of, and this is something that every Bond fan who's seen more than two movies can enjoy. You don't even have to be the esoteric, I've read the Hildebrand rarity type. All 100, some of us. No, something that we've all wanted but get to see so rarely. Q comes out into the field and helps. That is so awesome.
It was, and it wasn't. For me, that was the part that kind of... Well, I liked the fact that it happened because, hey, we get to see Q, first of all, and we get some gadgets. Awesome. The fact that he was out on his own was kind of the whole point of the film. And for Uncle Q to come around and help out, it was kind of like, all right, so I guess they're forcing us back into this Bond mold where they were doing such a good job of telling a story without it. And it felt cheap and forced to me. While I love
So the Bondy necessity felt cheap and forced to you.
That's what I'm saying, is that the fact that a Bond movie shouldn't have Q feeling cheap and forced. Like, we should be expecting it and it should be welcome. And instead, it felt as if it was like, okay, they're forcing us to, like, hey, by the way, this is Bond, guys. Hey, just in case you didn't remember, this is a Bond movie. Hey, look, Q's over here. Hey. I liked, I wouldn't want to see them take that scene out or take Q out of the film, but at the same time, it really kind of shone the light on the fact that, hey, the rest of this movie isn't really Bond-like. So we're going to force a little bit of Bond in here to try to bring you back into it. But for me, it kind of highlighted the fact that the rest of the movie isn't as Bondy necessity as it should be.
See, I didn't think it was out of place at all. I thought it was very touching that even though Bond went rogue and he's now persona non grata, he still has these relationships that he's built up where Moneypenny was concerned enough to try and find him. She does. And where Q, who's always been gruff and saying, you just don't respect anything I do. It turns out, of course, that, as we all knew, Q really loves him.
Aww,
and so
sweet.
Q goes out and helps him and then disrespects the equipment because he tosses the rake just out into the bush as soon as he uses the radio transmitter, which is hilarious.
That is funny. I'm not denying that.
I just thought Q was a delightful addition to the movie, and just another great treat for Bond fans who want more of Desmond Llewellyn's Q, and who, we love the 5-10 minutes we get of him in all the other movies, and we're kind of hoping for more. Well, now we get a little more. And so I just think it's yet another aspect where this movie, along with giving us all the trappings of classic 80s narco thriller, throws in special treats for Bond fans. Oh, you didn't read Hildebrand Rarity? Well, did you read Live and Let Die? Here's the shark. Oh, not that? Well, that whole stuff about On Her Majesty's Secret Service where his wife gets murdered? Well, we're going to base the whole plot on that. How about that? Isn't that special? Yes, it is. And so you really love Q? Well, here we're going to give you some Q. We're going to give you more Q than you've had before. That's awesome.
And yeah, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I still feel it was more like they took okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to put out an 80s action flick to compete with all the other 80s action flicks that have come out this past 9 years. And we'll sprinkle in a few Bond things to try and get the Bond fans to latch on to give us a boost. And I just feel that was the opposite way that I would have wanted it to be. I want a Bond movie with a few 80s action things sprinkled in to grab those attentions. And
would you have felt better if they could have gotten the permission to film in China that they wanted at first? Because originally this was not South America, this was China.
Oh, that would have been interesting. I mean, with the story they went with, how would they have changed the plot to...
Well, you know where most of the world's opium comes from, right?
Yeah, but...
The Southeast Asia. So
that would make sense, I suppose. But you wouldn't have the cool Florida Keys.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have. You might have had a Macau titty bar or something.
Oh,
Hong Kong titty bar.
Yeah.
But either way, I think it turned out very well. And another wonderful thing we get from this fact, to me, this just makes me smile and be happy and just grin whenever I think about it. The single best cover for a villain's operation ever. We run a drug operation through TV evangelism. There is nothing more poetically appropriate that I can think of than running a criminal enterprise through TV evangelism. That's brilliant. And to make it even more brilliant, the TV evangelist, who probably doesn't even know he's a front for a drug operation, is Wayne frickin' Newton.
I think he knows. I just don't think he cares because he's still getting his own thing on the side. He's still getting plenty of adoration and money and women and everything that he wants. So I think he knows because he's getting the cues. They're telling him what to say and what numbers to say, and I'm sure that there has to be some kind of code. He has to know what those numbers mean.
I think all of the TV evangelists out there, I think they all know.
Well, they all know they're full of crap and that they're just draining money from people. Yes,
I think he knows that there's something else going on, obviously, but I don't think he knows exactly what. I don't think he's ever toured the cocaine factory.
No, I wouldn't say that he's directly okay, I know exactly what these numbers mean, but I know he understands why
he's part of something that's full of shit, but, so did Jimmy Swaggart. So.
No, and yes, of course, he's a fantastic character in there. It's absolutely brilliant use of Wayne Newton. If you're going to put Wayne Newton in your movie and not have him sing, what are you going to do? Televangelist, of course.
Bless your heart.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not hating on Wayne Newton's Joe Butcher, Professor Joe Butcher. I'm sorry, but no. But all in all, I still have to say, even with I understand where you're coming from, and yes, it's a great movie, and I'm maybe willing to bump it up a notch or two on the Bondi Necessity scale based on your arguments, but I still think The Living Daylights is a better Bond film than License to Kill. If I'm just picking a movie to watch, and I only have a couple hours to watch a movie, I can only watch one movie. And these are the two movies that are up for grabs.
I would say if you only have a couple hours to watch a movie, you can only watch one movie. You're watching GoldenEye. I know you are.
GoldenEye or Casino Royale. It's going to be one of those two. But if it's between these two, I would say it's a coin flip because they're both great movies and they're both equally great movies, I think.
Okay, you said it. There, you said it.
All right. I see where you're going with this.
I win the internet.
But Living Daylights is good, though.
Yes, it is. It totally is. Robert Davi is greater than Joan Krabe.
So I guess what we have come to the conclusion of is we both question each other's judgment, and nothing much changed.
Except I got Eric to move License to Kill up to just about equal to Living Daylights, so I think I won the episode.
said as a movie, not as a Bond movie, though.
Backtracking.
All right. If we're keeping score in this episode, then I'll give you the point, sir.
Tell you what, you guys tell us. We
Yes,
gave you all of our
please.
contact information before, but in case you missed the most important one, HerMajesty'sPod.com. Go to this episode. Tell us who won the internet, if anybody.
Yes, we need scores.
Even if you think you
willing to
won the
concede
internet
a point.
because you enjoyed the episode, we'll like that answer better than anything.
That's actually kind of the best answer.
Yes.
And speaking of visiting us at HerMajesty'sPod.com, please enter our contest. You still have time. This contest is not closed until the end of the day on Halloween night. So please go to HerMajesty'sPod.com, click on that contest link, or just go to HerMajesty'sPod.com/contest. Type a few answers into the form, click submit, and you're golden. We are going to be giving away some fantastic prizes that are top secret. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Yes. So, enter.
Enter the contest. We've gotten great answers so far. We definitely want to hear more, though. So get your answers in. We want to hear them.
Yes, enter the contest and bless your heart.
Bless your heart. Yeah. So I guess in
And
summary,
I also like that in one of the most deadly serious moments of the entire film, and really, if you're going to view License to Kill the way I do, in terms of its importance to the personal story of James Bond. Deadly, deadly serious moment. He gets his revenge on Sanchez, the man who tried to murder his best friend and who murdered his best friend's wife on the wedding day the same way that his own wife got murdered on his wedding day. When he gets that revenge, the revenge that one could argue he never really got on Blofeld in a satisfying fashion.
unless you count the opening scene of For Your Eyes Only, which technically he isn't really.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, yeah. There's more power to this.
Yeah.
And even though he doesn't say it, he kills him with a pun. Because what does he use? A Felix lighter.
Oh, no, you didn't.
You never thought of that?
Oh, no, I didn't.
He kills him with a Felix lighter. How appropriate. I mean, that's brilliant.
Oh, my gosh. I never thought of it in that context. I just... Like, yeah, he's like, you know, hey, look, here's the wedding gift from Felix and his wife. Like, he shows it to him, and he lights it, sets him on fire, but I never... Lighter. Oh, God.
It's a Felix and Della lighter.
Oh, God. I'm dying here.
I can't believe you didn't catch that the first time.
Lighter. Like his name. Oh, my gosh. I'm dead over here. Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh.
This is a good time to remind you, you love chicks.
You love the chickens.
Speaking of, I don't recall seeing any chickens in either of these movies.
Yeah, what's up with that? Let's take a brief moment to ask the hard questions. Where are the chickens in the Dalton flicks?
Yeah. Oh, wait, no. I believe there were some chickens at the safe house in Living Daylights. I think.
Ah, proof of my point, then. Living Daylights wins. It has chickens.
But it doesn't have a Felix lighter. And the guy playing Felix in Living Daylights sucked. Can we agree on that?
Yes, I will agree on that because, oh my gosh. Like, seriously, what the hell was that? But he wasn't as big a part. So luckily, in License to Kill, where he was a bigger part, we got a better actor for it. So that's good.
Yes, and that's another thing I really like. We got, for the only time in the classic Bond series, we get a repeat of Felix Leiter. And he's the one who fans over time had overall agreed was the very best Felix ever. So I love that they got David Hedison back. That was fantastic. So cheers on that as well for License to Kill.
All right, fair enough.
So there we have it. I questioned Eric's judgment, he questioned mine, and the result was, we got you the Dalton episode, Redux. Hope you enjoyed it. And that will be our final episode ever before our list episodes have to deal with the 24 official Eon films and Never Say Never Again.
I'm so excited.
Because the next time we talk to you, we will be talking about Spectre.
I'm so excited. I have to like pretty much stay off the internet for the next couple of weeks because evidently doesn't it come out this weekend in England?
Yeah, it comes out tomorrow in the UK.
Gosh.
Based
I have
on
to
the day that
completely
we're recording
stay-
this, which means the day we're releasing this episode, it comes out in the UK.
So yeah, I have to pretty much stay off the internet for the next 2 weeks because people are going to be talking about this movie because they've already been able to see it, and I will have not been able to see it. So I'm kind of like, what's going on here? Why? Since when does the UK get stuff before us? That's not cool.
But one thing that I will say, as well as just a courtesy to our audience, of course, we're going to spoil the hell out of it when we talk about Spectre, but not for the first 20 minutes. So, if you haven't already seen Spectre by the time the episode drops, and Eric and I will be seeing it together in the same room at the very first showing possible in our time zone in the United States. So we'll be recording our episode almost immediately thereafter, so dropping in very short order. But for those who don't get a chance to see it right away, we will just talk in generalities for the first 20 minutes. And then we'll give you a warning that we're going to start spoiling. So you can start listening to the episode. If you've seen the movie, keep going. And if you haven't seen it yet, press pause, go see it, and listen to the rest.
Yes. And we'll give fair warning before, so you don't have to be timing it necessarily. We will make sure to say, okay, at this point, if you have not seen the film, it's time for you to pause, go watch the movie, and then come back.
Yes. But now it's time for us to say farewell to the pre-Spectre era of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast. We're glad you're with us. We're glad you've been with us. And we're glad you're still going to be with us. We very much appreciate you, as always.
Heck yeah.
So, I'm Ziggy Berkeley.
And I'm Eric Dewey.
And you have been listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network.
This has been another great presentation by the Four-Eyed Radio Network. You can find more information at foureyedradio.com.